Hi, welcome to Flory Models. I'm Flory. Sorry we're a day late, but I had a couple of meetings yesterday and there's no way I was going to have time to get this up. And obviously if it bums out with YouTube's it's being uploaded or to the server or something else like that, it doesn't go up. So it's better to do it today, so that way I can film today and relax and do it all nice, all in one. First of all, the name change. Last week, as I say, I know it's a bit chaotic for some of you, but literally out of 1,600 members, I think we only had trouble with 20, which I thought was absolutely pretty much spot on. What I had to do was change everybody's username to their real name, and obviously if you imagine I went along and typed in everybody's name, it felt like I shook everybody's hand, every single member's name, and had to copy and paste their real name into obviously their username, update the system for the main system, and then the same on the forum, and then it had to be linked to PayPal as well for obviously all your subscription payments. So they're all directed and they're all under the same name now, so it just makes things a lot easier. So if you imagine I had to do that to every single person, it took 2 minutes to do every single one. So say Friday night was up half up the night doing it that way. Saturday was all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and then good part of Monday morning as well doing it. As I said, I know a lot of you probably coming back, obviously Friday was a big day, yesterday had lots of you saying you couldn't get in and all the rest of it, but literally if you do the password retrieval, it gives you your username as well. So if you are wondering why you can't get in, that might be the reason. The other reason is, unfortunately, is your subscriptions aren't up to date because the automatic system I turned off about 3 months ago and have been doing it manually. And then some of your names where it didn't know, I didn't know who you were or anything else, when I turned it back on, it deleted everybody else got deleted. So there was about 35 of you who just got deleted off the system. Then obviously you've come back in and said, I can't get in, it's because you're not subscribed. So obviously a lot of you have resubscribed and are all up to date, but now the system is in operation. So you do have to have a couple of little things we've had is a account on file with PayPal subscription things. As soon as you delete it, it cancels the one on the site, and that's why you can't get in the site. And now the forum's turned on as well, it just deletes both of them in a row. So just make sure it is all up to date. It's on a delay system, so it sends me an email and I have to then confirm to delete it at the moment, but eventually it will just be automatic. So just make sure your cards are up to date and things like that, because I know a lot of you, especially if you've done a yearly subscription, perhaps your cards are out of date that PayPal keeps on file and things like that. So when it comes to renew, it can't do it. It does send you 3 emails and then you get one from me and then normally another one through the forum as well. So you're going to get 5 attempts to get contacted to get it sorted over the space of a week. After that, it just gets deleted. So a big thank you to everybody who sort of stuck by me, because I know a few of you have problems and it took me a while to tie your accounts down, but within a couple of hours I had everybody sorted anyway. So that is all done now. So now it looks quite nice in the old forum that you go through and you can see everybody's real name. And it hasn't taken me long, especially I've been going through. It's probably a little bit easier because as I say, I've been in everybody's profile and looked at everything. So I sort of know you anyway, but certainly I think by tying in your avatar pictures to you and things like that, it's not too bad. So it all went swimmingly well. So as I say, it was a massive thing, and as I say, there's no way I could do an IT job ever. I have hats off to everybody. I know I used to be the biggest person used to say that guys who do IT, that's a tough job, you know, go work in a mine, that's a tough job. But after doing that, it's real mental. So anyway, I got on with nice little modelling, as you can see here. I'll talk about the background in a minute, but basically we have finished off the very nice multimedia Alicat 1/48 scale Tucano. Now this is an absolute gem. We finished it already, so it's all done. As I say, I started it before Christmas, and with everything that went on, it just took me a little while just to finish it off. But the last 2 parts are up there, 4 and 5 are up there at the moment. So the entire one, it's a 5-part build, so it's 2.5 hours. And if you haven't seen a resin multimedia kit done before, probably a good idea to have a look. If you're not a subscriber, you can also see part 1 of this. It's on the free to view page for this week. It's free. You can go and see part 1, which is the first 30 minutes, where I talk about what you do, how you do certain things. I'm plugging it because obviously it comes on resin plugs instead of sprues and things like that. So it was an absolute joy to build, lovely to do gloss work, and for the first time I have to think, and I can't remember, this hasn't got my wash on it. And I think you agree, it did come out very nice, and it's very shiny, and it really, you know, I was thinking, yeah, come on, get the wash on there and all the rest of it, because that's what I do. But I haven't. I've left it very nice and glossy and just that. But I have to say, hats off to Alicat. First resin build that I've done since a certain 1/48 scale early warning naval aircraft. Well, I won't even say their names, I got in trouble last time, but it was a horrible kit. It fought me every step of the way, and if you want to see that nightmare as a photo build, you can see that in the photo build section on the site. There's a certain early warning aircraft with a radome on it from a certain resin manufacturer, and it was like building bubble gum. It was horrible from start to finish, and it fought me all the way. This one, new, obviously, you know, recessed panel lines, fantastic job, everything else like that. And when it goes together, it just falls together. I have one minor fit issue, and that is fitting the wing box section underneath, because it's a one-part wing, goes up into the fuselage, didn't quite fit. Bit of sanding, and that's the beautiful thing with resin. Sanding resin, so easy, and you can fill and sand, and it's just so easy. When you're dealing with styrene, because then you've got filler, and then obviously if you're going to use obviously resin wedges or styrene wedges, and then obviously super glues as filler, it's a real nasty thing to try and sand and get to seal in, but that went together very well, and a big hats off to them, because it's the first time I've used also a clear resin canopy, because I hate vac form canopies. Went together perfect, crystal clear, beautiful casting. So if you want to see those, you can see those, say 4 or 5's up now, but the entire build is up there now. If you want to see what we're on about as well, I've built a few pages for the last few builds. Certainly you can see down here's the MiG, over there we've got a few of the other builds as well. If you want to know all about what goes on with the builds, and you can see all the finished photos when it's all done, there's about 20 photos of each of them as well. There'll be a link up below here as well that will link you to all those different builds that we've done recently and everything else like that. So that's that. The big other news, I suppose, is that a couple of mad team members, I should say, are currently tackling the Vigan. Now, this is the old FX Vigan, or was it the Esky did it as well, I think, before that became them. And as we all know, it's a nightmare of a kit, and they are using everybody's update set that's ever been designed or ever done to sort of bring these birds up to scratch, and that is just starting on the forum now. Now we hope to bring that at you onto the main site as well as they progress and go right the way through, but that's basically Marcus, Jonas and Hans, who are the team here, have got together for a little mini build of their own and are tackling that, and that has started today. So if you want to have a look in the forum, you can see exactly what they do, and you know, as I say, it's a nightmare kit to work with in the first place, and they've got all these updates from everybody's update set you can imagine on these to bring them up to scratch, and there's some fantastic markings going to be on those as well. So you can certainly have a look at those. This week's photo build is extremely nice. It's the MPM 172nd Bristol Blenheim. Now, Mark Windsor's done this one. As you say, you have to imagine it's only a dinky little thing. And as I say, it's a pretty flashy, not a brilliant kit. It's got lots of issues with it. And he has turned out this absolute stunner. And it really, really is a nice one to do. So if you want to have a look exactly how he got it to look like that, click down the bottom here, photo builds. It's also in the photo build section of the site, and you can see all about that. It's really well worth it to have a look at those. The other thing as well, Jonas has done a review on the Lanson, I think you pronounce it as, which is the A32A 148 kit, new one out, as I say, so you can see how it is. He's got a couple of post build-up ones where he stuck it together with Tamiya tape to have a look at the scaling and things like that, and he's done a great review down the bottom there. Got to speak as well, the artillery SIG has now started as of today. This is artillery through the ages, so you can do any type of artillery, so we're not just talking cannons and things here. We're talking AAA, as in air-to-air artillery, anything from a slingshot to, you know, anything that fires a shell or a projectile will count. And that one's run by, God, sorry Steve, I forgot your name for a brief second. Steve's doing that one with some help of the other guys as well. So if you're into that sort of mud moving type of thing, that's for you, and that has started today. We've still got the Hornet group build which is gone at the moment. We've got a couple of months on that one. That's not going to finish to the end of March, 25th of March on that one. And the Harrier SIG as well, you've got to the 15th of April to get that one done. The Airliner group build is currently on, and next week I'm going to bring you up to speed on the one I'm working, which is just over here, which is the Transall. And I'll talk to you about that when I've got room, because as I say, I've done a bit of photographing, so that is going to be on the way as well next week. So the next builds up for me for video builds like this is the Transall, which is halfway through at the moment, so you'll be playing catch up with me. I'll probably bring you the first 2 parts next week, and then on and on. And the other big one I put down here right next to it is the big F-14D Tomcat. This is the trumpeter one, which I'm going to have as an in-flight pose. Lots of you have emailed and PM me and things like that saying, what aftermarkets am I going to use? To be honest, I'm not going to use any. It's not going to have any wheels down, so there's no point doing wheels or wheel wells, things like that. The canopy is going to be closed with crew, so there's no point really putting a cockpit in it. And as for the exhaust cans, it's going to have 2 very, very large acrylic rods hanging out of them, because we're going to have it as an in-flight rolling over display with its wings swept and everything else. So I'm not going to be using anything. It's literally going to be straight out of the box for me, but I really am going to weather this one up as well and give it quite a nasty weather job, to sort of showing off how we do all things like that. So that is the one to look at. And let's say the Transall as well, that's quite a nice camo pattern on that one. It's going to be coming along shortly. So anyway, a lot of people have been asking about my photo setup. So it just so happens I was photographing on Thursday, so we left it all here. I used to use, if you see my previous shows, I used to use a cardboard box with a blue bit of card in there, and that was it. Anyway, speaking to some of the guys, and Marcus showed me this one as well, this here is a blackout blind that I've attached to the top, and it's on a little beaded thing just over here, and you can wheel it up and down. Two things that are brilliant for this is, one is it's a nice neutral colour using the blue, so obviously you don't get any reflections, things like that. Secondly, it's a nice thick material, so you don't get any creases, where paper one, I've still got a paper one over here to be honest, it's got loads of creases in it now, it looks horrible. The other thing as well, because it all rolls up, it doesn't get dusty, because it's just going to be the underside bottom bit here. The rest of it is all going to be kept nice and clean because it's in here. You obviously got the weighted bar at the end which holds it down so it doesn't roll up. So all those problems you have works perfectly. So if you want to do a very, very quick and easy way of doing a photo studio type thing, you can get away with a couple of lights. To be honest, I've got the one over here as you can see here, and obviously I've got the big daylight one here. Just like that. That's all I use, and I'm all on auto settings. I've got an H10 camera, which has got a battery in it, and literally I just shoot on auto mode just on the top here. I always use the macro, and then usual thing, you can just sort of zoom in to how you want it and things like that, in and out. Just shoot, point and shoot. I'm not one of these guys who gets in there and has hundreds of lighting and lighting boxes and everything else, and that's how I take all my photos. Try and keep them as simple as possible, and that way, because I'm quite a simple chap and I'm not up to f10s and f gauges and apertures and everything else, I literally just shoot on auto. But a good background really, really helps, and it'll make your photos look a lot better. And obviously if you've got clutter in the background, you don't see the clean lines of your model, no matter if it's a tank or if it's a plane or what it is, or a boat. If you've got a nice clean background, it really shows them off. So as you can see, you get photos like this one here. Obviously the Tucano looks great. You can use other backgrounds as well. I used white recently as well, as you can see here on the MiG, but the trouble with those is you tend to get obviously problems with the camera. It doesn't like shooting on white and that. I know the magazines will like shooting on white because it's easier for them to cut it out and stick it into magazines. Personally, I like blue or black. I used to use black a few years ago, which is a really, really nice thing. So the other thing I'm going to show you this week, just before we go, people have been asking me about glossing and how do I do glossing, and a lot of people talk about dropping air pressure, which will work, don't get me wrong, and heavily thin. So if you drop your air pressure, heavily thin your paint, you can literally put it on a nice gentle coat. We're not talking just squirting around, nice gentle coat. Or the other way of doing it is this. Okay, so this is all totally dried off now, and that's a good idea to let this one go off. So what we've done, we've gone along and we just touched in a couple of little areas where we have bleed through, coming through and things like that. Now the next thing we want to do is obviously we need to decal and move through the build, but what we want to do is lock this down and give it an extra glossy finish. Now many times I've obviously tried to spray glosses, and to actually spray or airbrush a gloss coat is extremely hard because you need to lower the air pressure, you have to be incredibly delicate and building it up and everything else, which does take a little bit of a long time and does take a little bit of sort of skill and talent to do that. Now a quick way to get around that problem is to use something like this. Now this is the old Johnson's Clear. You've seen me use this many times. This is the old one which is clear, this is the new one which is a bit more milky but does the same thing, okay? Now I use this stuff purely because it's the cheapest gloss you can find on the market. Once this stuff dries, it's as hard as nails. It really is nice stuff to work with. Also, it has multiple things. We use it for dipping canopies. We also use it for protective coats on aircraft, things like that. But as you can see, it is very milky, okay? So a lot of people think you can't use it for traditional brush painting and obviously dipping, but don't panic because it does dry actually pretty clear. So what we're going to do, we'll do the top side, okay? So all we got here is our little cupful down the bottom here. Just find somewhere to hold this. So we just take, got like a 1-inch flat brush, not too much, knock a little bit of the excess off. Now make sure your brush is totally clear, and all we're going to do is just pop it on and long brush strokes with this, okay? And all we do, a bit more, knock off the excess, okay, and brush it on, and make sure you've gone everywhere. Now go over the areas a couple of times, but try and keep them all to the one direction. Now the great thing about this stuff, it's self-leveling, okay? So we're going to start with the wings to start with, okay, but it is self-leveling, so you don't have to worry about it. If you've got pools of it and things like that, it will. But what you want to do is just make sure it's an even coat. If it's not an even coat, then you tend to have trouble. Don't panic if you've got little air bubbles in it and things like that, because they will go. But you can probably see, very glossy. Now that won't dry like that, unfortunately. It will take a few coats to get that to that position. But what we'll do, we're just going everywhere with this. Now, your only problem with brushing this on like this is that you can get little pools of it appear and runs and things like that. So you want to make sure they're not on your model. Don't let it build up in too many areas and things like that. So we're just going to run it down the sides. But as I say, make sure it's a clean brush you're doing it as well, because you're dealing with a clear. Okay. So what we're going to do is just running this down the sides, and then just every now and again flip it over and check the underside to make sure you haven't got any runs appearing underneath. If you have, when they're wet, you can just give them a quick dab and away you go. So we're just going to do under here as well, and we're going to go round the entire model. Okay, now there's a couple of little tips and tricks you can do with this stuff. Firstly, if you've got a hairdryer on quite a warm setting, just flick it over it once you put this on. It will just help it all cohere down nicely and glossy and everything else. Now it doesn't take too long to dry, just as when we're the same as when we're airbrushing this on. It does tend to go on very, very quickly and dry. That's the bonus with this stuff. And in 20 minutes you'll be fine. I wouldn't overcoat, go too many coats on this until you're dry on there, so don't build up too much, otherwise you might find you're going to get runs appearing and things like that. So what we're going to do, we've done down the back end for the moment, and just have a look for runs and things. Keep an eye on it. If you've got big pools area, just give it a brush over. Like down here on the wing we've got some pooling, we're just going to brush it, and as I say, it will self-level and everything else like that. You just need to keep an eye on how it's building up. And when you put this stuff on top of itself, it sort of melts into each other, so don't worry too much. I'm just going to pop some down here on these lower wings and work around. But what you will notice, two things. First of all, obviously you'll get a nice glossy finish, but it will protect your acrylic paint, and the acrylic paints do tend to be a little bit more delicate, shall we say, than the enamels. So we've done down the back end, and what I'm going to do, I'll let it dry off, and then obviously I can touch the front and everything else. Just make sure you haven't got any build up on edges and things like that. But say, you can pop away with your hairdryer now, as I'm going to do. Stick a hairdryer, warm setting to lock it in and get it to dry. And also doing it with the hairdryer, it stops it all just pooling in one area. Because you're moving it round, it will keep it dry as we go round. Okay, so that's it for this week. So you've got lots of things to be getting on with, you've got lots of group builds to be getting on with. Next week's show, I'm going to be putting up here a lot of your SIG work from obviously the Hornet build, the Harrier build, the artillery one, and also we're going to put the airliner, some of your work so far that we've got, just to motivate you all to come along. I'm going to show you how I'm getting on with the actual Transall, getting on with that one as well, and I might even be able to show you the start of the build on the actual Tomcat as well. So until next week, everybody, happy modelling and take care.